The message arrived on a quiet Tuesday morning. At first, the radio astronomers at the Global Space Communications Center thought it was just another piece of cosmic noise. But as the pattern repeated itself with perfect precision, their coffee cups froze halfway to their mouths. This was it, humanity's first contact with an alien civilization. Within hours, the world's top scientists and military leaders gathered in an emergency meeting. The message was simple enough to decode. The collective, as they called themselves, wanted to meet Earth's leaders. They described themselves as an advanced civilization spanning hundreds of star systems. Major Tom Wilson stood at the back of the packed conference room, watching the gathered officials argue about how to respond. His 20 years of military service told him something wasn't quite right about the aliens' message. It seemed condescending. "They're treating us like children," he muttered to General Kate Roberts, who nodded in agreement. The aliens' second message confirmed their suspicions. "We are deeply concerned," the transmission stated, "to discover that your species still engages in the primitive practice of warfare. We will send representatives to help guide your civilization toward a more evolved state." Laughter erupted in the military command center when they heard this. "They think we fight because we don't know any better," General Roberts said, shaking her head. "Should we tell them about Sun Tzu, Clausewitz, the thousands of years we've spent studying the art of war?" The collected ship arrived 3 days later, a massive silver sphere that settled into orbit with impossible grace. Their representatives, tall beings with smooth metallic skin and flowing robes, landed outside the United Nations headquarters in New York. The alien leader, who called himself the first speaker, stood before the UN Assembly. His metallic features showed what could only be described as pity. "My dear humans," he began, his words automatically translated through their advanced technology. "We were quite shocked to discover that you still maintain military forces. In our civilization, we evolved past such primitive displays of force over 10,000 years ago." In the audience, Major Wilson watched as the alien continued his speech about peace and enlightenment. But something caught his attention: the way the alien representatives moved. Despite their advanced technology, they had no awareness of their surroundings. No tactical positioning. No defensive stancing. They were completely unprepared for any threat. During the reception that followed, Wilson observed more concerning details. The aliens grouped together in the center of the room, leaving themselves exposed from all angles. They didn't position themselves near exits. They didn't even seem to understand basic security protocols. "They'd forgotten," he whispered to General Roberts. "They've forgotten everything about protecting themselves." The general nodded slowly. "And they think that makes them advanced. Look at their guards. They're just for show. No real combat training." Later that evening, during a private meeting of Earth's military leadership, screens showed satellite images of the alien vessel. Despite its impressive size, it had no visible defensive capabilities. No point defense systems. No armor plating. Just smooth, artistic curves. "They're like children," General Roberts addressed the room. "They've lived so long without real threats that they've forgotten why we developed warfare in the first place. To protect what we love." Major Wilson stepped forward. "Should we tell them about the predators our ancestors faced? About how warfare drove us to develop everything from medicine to spaceflight? About how understanding conflict helped us create lasting peace?" The room fell silent as they considered the implications. These aliens, for all their advanced technology, had no concept of real defense. No understanding of the complex strategies that had helped humanity survive countless threats. "No," General Roberts finally said. "Let them think we're primitive for now. But something tells me they'll learn soon enough why humanity never forgot the art of warfare. The galaxy is a big place, and I doubt every species out there is as enlightened as they are." As if to prove her point, the aliens' next transmission arrived. They had detected unknown vessels approaching from deep space. Vessels that weren't responding to any peaceful hails. The humans exchanged knowing looks. Maybe being primitive wasn't such a bad thing after all. The first speaker stared at the holographic display with growing confusion. For the past week, his research team had been studying human military history, and what they found made no sense to him. "This cannot be correct," he said, his metallic fingers moving through the floating images. "They have over 10,000 different fighting styles, just for hand-to-hand combat." His assistant, second speaker, nodded slowly. "And that's just what we've documented so far. These humans develop different combat techniques for every type of terrain. Mountains, deserts, forests, urban areas, even underwater." In the corner of the room, Major Wilson watched the aliens with amusement. The collective had asked him to help them understand human military history. He hadn't expected them to be so overwhelmed by the basics. "Show me more about this. Guerrilla warfare," the first speaker requested. The hologram shifted to show historical battles. Vietnamese soldiers disappearing into tunnels, Afghan fighters melting into mountain passes, American revolutionaries using forests for cover. "But this makes no sense." First speaker protested. "They're running away from battle. Where is the honor in that?" Major Wilson stepped forward. "It's not about running away," he explained patiently. "It's about surviving to fight another day. About choosing the right moment to strike." The aliens looked at him as if he had suggested eating rocks for breakfast. "In our culture," second speaker said proudly, "warfare was ritualized. Two armies would meet on an open field. They would bow, fight according to strict rules, and the loser would accept defeat gracefully." Wilson tried not to roll his eyes. "And what happened when you met someone who didn't follow your rules?" The room fell silent. Later that day, General Roberts joined them for a demonstration. She had brought videos showing military exercises from around the world. Navy SEALs performing underwater infiltrations, Army Rangers conducting mountain warfare training, Air Force pilots executing complex maneuvers. "Your species trains for every possible scenario," first speaker observed, watching footage of desert warfare exercises. "But why? Surely once you master one type of combat, that should be enough." General Roberts laughed. "The environment shapes the battle. Fighting in a jungle is nothing like fighting in a city. Each terrain demands different skills, different strategies." The aliens continued their research, growing more startled with each discovery. They learned about combined arms warfare, where different military branches worked together. They studied psychological warfare, which seemed to frighten them the most. "You mean you fight without fighting?" second speaker asked, horrified. "You use words and fear as weapons. Sometimes the best victory is the one where no shots are fired," Wilson explained. The assessment room was now covered in displays showing human military innovation. The aliens were particularly interested in how warfare had driven human technological development. "So these radios were first widely used in war?" first speaker asked. "Along with radar, jet engines, computers, and emergency medicine," General Roberts confirmed. "Necessity is a powerful motivator." As the day drew to a close, first speaker made an announcement. "We have been incorrect in our assessment of human warfare," he admitted. "We thought it was simple violence, but it's far more complex than our ritual combat ever was." Wilson and Roberts shared a knowing look, but before they could respond, an urgent message came through. The unknown vessels they had detected were getting closer. The collective's long-range scans showed they were heavily armed. First speaker's metallic face somehow managed to look pale. We don't know how to handle this. Our ritual combat won't work against ships like those." "No," General Roberts agreed. "It won't." She paused, looking at the worried aliens. "But maybe it's time we taught you some new tricks. Real ones this time." First speaker looked at the approaching threat, then back at the humans. For the first time, he seemed to truly understand. Their primitive warfare wasn't primitive at all. It was an art form born from necessity and honed through millennia of survival. "Teach us," he said simply. Major Wilson smiled. The real lessons were about to begin. The emergency alarm blared through the collective's main colony on Beta Prime. First speaker stared at the tactical display in horror as dozens of dark ships appeared from nowhere. The swarm, as they would come to be known, had arrived without warning. "Send out the ceremonial combat challenge," he ordered, following thousands of years of tradition. The response came in the form of burning plasma bolts that lit up the colony's shields. "They're not following the rules," second speaker said, his metallic hands shaking. "This isn't how combat is supposed to work." The colony's defenses, designed more for show than actual warfare, began failing under the brutal assault. The collective ships, beautiful but useless, fell one by one to the enemy's savage attacks. In just 6 hours, 3 settlements were lost. First speaker made the hardest decision of his life. Contact Earth immediately. On Earth, the emergency message found Major Wilson and General Roberts already preparing for action. They had expected something like this since first detecting the unknown ships. "They're asking for military advisors," General Roberts told the Emergency Council. "Their whole defense system is collapsing." The council room erupted in debate, but Wilson's voice cut through the noise. "If we don't help them, the swarm might come for Earth next. Better to fight them there than here." Within 24 hours, a small team of Earth's finest military experts was aboard a fast transport to Beta Prime. Wilson led the group, which included experts in space combat, tactical planning, and defensive strategies. They arrived to find chaos. The collective's leaders were huddled in their grand hall, still trying to send ceremonial combat challenges to an enemy that clearly didn't care about their traditions. "Stop that," Wilson ordered as he walked into the hall. "Your enemy isn't interested in your ceremonies. Show me your defense systems." What they found was worse than expected. The collective's weapons were designed to look impressive but cause minimal damage. Their shields were meant to handle simple ceremonial exchanges, not sustained attacks. Even their tactical rooms were built for beauty rather than function. "This is like preparing for a boxing match by arranging flowers," muttered Captain Jane Miller, the team's tactical expert, as she examined their combat protocols. The humans worked quickly. They converted the ornate meeting halls into proper command centers. The beautiful but useless defensive displays were replaced with practical tactical screens. Wilson had them reorganize their entire defense force. "But these formations aren't elegant at all," complained one alien commander as Wilson showed them basic combat maneuvers. "They're not supposed to be elegant," Wilson snapped. "They're supposed to keep you alive." A new alert sounded. The swarm had found another colony. "Perfect timing for your first real lesson," Wilson said. He turned to the alien commanders. "Forget everything you know about ceremonial combat. Today, you learn how humans fight." The aliens watched in shock as Wilson ordered their ships into what seemed like a retreat. "Running away is shameful," first speaker protested. "We're not running away," Wilson explained with a grim smile. "We're setting up an ambush. Captain Miller, show them the trap we prepared." As the swarm ships chased what they thought was an easy target, they didn't notice the hidden defensive positions. When the trap was sprung, the aliens watched in awe as their own ships, finally used properly, tore through the enemy formation. "This is nothing like our ceremonial combat," second speaker whispered, watching the battle unfold. "That's why it works," General Roberts replied, having just arrived with reinforcements. "Real combat isn't about looking good or following rules. It's about surviving and protecting your people." The battle ended with their first victory. The swarm ships retreated, leaving behind their wreckage as testament to the new way of warfare. First speaker looked at the battle report, then at Wilson. "We have much to learn," he said quietly, "and very little time to learn it." Wilson nodded. "Then let's get started." This was just the beginning. Behind them, the tactical displays showed more swarm ships gathering in the darkness of space. The real war was about to begin. "No, no, no." Major Wilson's voice echoed through the converted training hall. You can't just stand there looking pretty when someone's shooting at you. The group of collective warriors, their metallic skin gleaming under the lights, stared at him in confusion. They had spent the last hour practicing the same basic combat move, and none of them seemed to understand the point of ducking. "But if we duck, the enemy won't be able to see our ceremonial battle markings," one of them protested. Captain Miller, standing beside Wilson, put her face in her hands. "The goal is for the enemy not to see you at all." It had been 3 days since the first battle with the swarm. While that victory had bought them time, everyone knew more attacks were coming. The human instructors had turned the collective's largest meeting hall into a military training center, much to the aliens' horror. "Look," Wilson said, trying to stay patient. "Forget everything you know about combat. Today we're learning something called guerrilla warfare." He played a holographic simulation showing Earth's historical battles. The aliens watched with growing interest as smaller forces defeated larger ones through clever tactics. "This is dishonorable," first speaker said from the observation deck, but his voice held a note of curiosity rather than disapproval. "Would you rather be honorable and dead, or dishonorable and alive?" General Roberts asked, standing next to him. "The swarm doesn't care about your honor." The training continued. The humans taught the aliens about cover and concealment, about the importance of terrain, about using the environment to their advantage. It was like teaching chess to someone who had only played tic-tac-toe. "Now this is what we call a tactical retreat," Captain Miller explained to her group. "You mean running away?" An alien warrior asked, horrified. "I mean living to fight another day," Miller corrected. "Sometimes the best way to win is to choose when and where you fight." In another part of the facility, Wilson was teaching them about something that really blew their minds. Deception. "You want us to lie?" Second speaker asked, sounding scandalized. "I want you to survive," Wilson replied. "The swarm thinks you only know ceremonial combat. Let them keep thinking that. Surprise is our best weapon." The aliens were particularly struggling with the concept of camouflage. Their entire culture was built around being seen, being noticed. The idea of hiding was foreign to them. "But our armor is designed to shine in the sunlight," one warrior complained as humans taught them how to apply camouflage patterns. "That's exactly why you're losing," General Roberts said bluntly. "You might as well put target signs on yourselves." By the end of the week, progress was finally visible. The collective warriors had learned to move quietly, to use cover, to think tactically. It wasn't pretty, but it was effective. During a simulation exercise, first speaker watched in amazement as his warriors successfully executed an ambush. No ceremony, no dramatic speeches, just quick and efficient action. "They're learning," he said to General Roberts. "They have to," she replied. "The swarm won't give them a second chance." The biggest breakthrough came when they introduced the concept of combined arms warfare. The aliens had always fought in separate units, never coordinating their actions. "Your space forces support your ground forces," Wilson explained. "Your fast ships protect your slow but powerful ones. Everything works together." As if to test their progress, the long-range sensors detected swarm ships approaching a distant colony. This time, though, the aliens didn't panic. "Should we send them our ceremonial challenge?" Second speaker asked Wilson, a slight smile showing he was joking. "No," Wilson replied, returning the smile. "Show me what you've learned instead." The collective warriors moved to their positions, their movements no longer stiff and ceremonial but fluid and purposeful. They had learned more in a week than in thousands of years of ritual combat. First speaker watched his troops prepare for real battle. "We're not ready," he said quietly. "No one ever is," General Roberts replied. "But you're a lot more ready than you were a week ago." In the distance, the swarm ships approached, unaware that they were no longer facing the same ceremonial warriors they had so easily defeated before. The real test was about to begin. The swarm ships emerged from hyperspace, their dark hulls blocking out the stars. They approached the colony on Beta Minor with confidence, expecting another easy victory over the ceremonial warriors they had beaten before. They were in for a surprise. Enemy ships entering Sector 4, Captain Miller announced in the new Combat Control Center. The room was dark and efficient, nothing like the bright, ornate command centers the collective used to prefer. First speaker stood beside Major Wilson, watching the tactical display. His metallic hands were steady now, not shaking like before. All units in position. Wilson nodded with approval. The collective warriors had learned well. The swarm ships moved into attack formation, the same aggressive pattern they had used in previous battles. They expected to see the collected ships arranged in their usual ceremonial display. Instead, they found nothing. "Where are they?" Second speaker asked, watching from his station. "Shouldn't we be seeing their confusion by now?" "Patience," Wilson replied. "Let them come closer." The swarm ships pressed forward, their sensors scanning for the usual bright, shining vessels of the collective. But the collected ships were now hidden in the shadow of the system's asteroid belt, their once gleaming hulls covered in dark, sensor-absorbing material. "They're entering the kill zone," Miller announced. "All units prepare to execute Battle Plan Earth." The name had been the aliens' idea, a tribute to where they had learned their new tactics. The trap was sprung. From behind asteroids and hidden orbital positions, collective ships emerged. Their formation wasn't beautiful or ceremonial. It was deadly efficient. "First wave, engage," first speaker ordered, his voice firm. The swarm ships, caught by surprise, tried to turn and face the threat. But they had fallen right into the humans' classic hammer and anvil strategy. "Second wave, launch now," Wilson commanded. More collective ships appeared from the other side of the planet, catching the swarm in a crossfire. The enemy ships, used to fighting targets that announced themselves with ceremony, were suddenly facing an opponent that fought with cunning and coordination. "Look at their formation breaking apart," Miller observed with satisfaction. "They don't know how to handle an enemy that actually fights back." The battle wasn't elegant, it wasn't ceremonial, but it was effective. One swarm ship exploded as concentrated fire from 3 collective vessels tore through its shields. Another tried to retreat but found its escape route blocked by carefully positioned fighters. "They're trying to regroup," second speaker reported. "Just like you said they would." "Spring the second trap," Wilson ordered. The asteroids that the swarm ships were retreating toward suddenly revealed themselves to be disguised mines. The explosions ripped through the enemy formation, creating chaos. "Now that," first speaker said with satisfaction, "was worth giving up our ceremonial combat for." The remaining swarm ships began to retreat in earnest, but the collective forces didn't let up. They had learned from Earth's military history. A retreating enemy that escapes can return stronger. "Pursuit teams, engage as planned," Miller commanded. The faster collective ships broke off to harass the retreating swarm vessels, not letting them make a clean jump to hyperspace. When it was over, the space around Beta Minor was filled with drifting debris from swarm ships. The collective had lost only 2 vessels, and even those crews had managed to escape in pods, something they had never considered before the humans taught them about survival protocols. In the command center, first speaker turned to Wilson. "This victory, it feels different from our ceremonial ones." "Because it's real," Wilson replied. "You fought for survival, not for show." "The swarm will be back," General Roberts reminded them, entering the command center. "And they'll be ready for these tactics next time. Then we'll have to learn new ones," first speaker said, surprising the humans with his eagerness. "What else can you teach us?" Wilson smiled. The collective had taken their first real step from ceremonial warriors to actual fighters. But as he looked at the long-range scanners showing more swarm ships gathering in deep space, he knew this was just the beginning. "Now," he said, "we teach you about something called rapid adaptation, because the next battle won't be anything like this one." The war was far from over, but for the first time, the collective had a real chance of winning it. 2 months after their first real victory, The collective's main library had been transformed. Where once it held only records of ceremonial combat, now its halls were filled with holographic displays of Earth's military history. First speaker stood before a massive display showing the Battle of Thermopylae. 300 warriors against an army of thousands, he mused, and they chose the battlefield to their advantage. Finally starting to understand, aren't you? Major Wilson said, walking up beside him. The human commander looked tired but satisfied. The past weeks had brought more battles, more victories, and more learning. In another section of the library, second speaker was teaching young collective warriors about something that had once been forbidden knowledge, the art of deception in warfare. Look at how the humans used fake tanks in World War II, he explained, pointing to the images. They made their enemies see what they wanted them to see. The young warriors, their metallic skin not yet marked with ceremonial patterns, watched with fascination. Unlike their elders, they had embraced these new concepts eagerly. Captain Miller entered the library, carrying fresh battle reports. The swarm attacked 2 more colonies yesterday, she announced. But unlike 2 months ago, there was no panic. First speaker simply nodded. And both attacks were repelled. The colonies used the defense plans we developed. Minimal losses on our side. The news spread through the library, but the warriors didn't celebrate with their usual ceremonial dances. Instead, they immediately began studying the battle reports, looking for ways to improve their tactics. You've changed us, first speaker said to Wilson. Our entire civilization is transforming. Wilson watched as a group of collective engineers studied human medical techniques developed during warfare. In another corner, scientists were analyzing how Earth's conflicts had driven technological innovation. We're not just learning about fighting, second speaker realized. We're learning about progress. The humans had shown them how warfare had led to advances in medicine, technology, and even peace negotiations. Every conflict had pushed humanity to innovate, to adapt, to improve. Your ceremonies were about showing off, General Roberts said, joining them. Real warfare is about survival, about protecting what matters. It drives you to excel in every field. A young warrior approached them, his metallic skin bearing simple camouflage patterns instead of the traditional ceremonial marks. The swarm is adapting to our new tactics, he reported. They're starting to copy some of our strategies. First speaker surprised everyone by smiling. Good, he said. That means we need to innovate again, just like humans do. The main display shifted to show their latest victory. The collective ships moved with precision and purpose, nothing like their old ceremonial formations. They used asteroids for cover, coordinated their attacks, and employed deception tactics that would have been unthinkable months ago. We used to think warfare was primitive, first speaker admitted, but now we understand. It's an art form, a science, a driver of progress. Wilson nodded. War itself isn't something to celebrate, but being prepared for it, understanding it, that's what keeps civilizations alive. In the tactical training room, new recruits were learning about something called asymmetric warfare. The concept that a smaller force could defeat a larger one through superior tactics had revolutionized collective military thinking. The swarm still outnumbers us, second speaker noted, but they no longer outmatch us. Captain Miller pulled up the latest intelligence reports. They're gathering a massive fleet, bigger than anything we faced before. But unlike the terror such news would have caused before, the collective warriors simply began analyzing the data, looking for weaknesses to exploit. Send word to all colonies, first speaker ordered. It's time to implement Defense Plan Delta. The plan, a complex combination of human military strategy and collective technology, would have been impossible for them to conceive just months ago. General Roberts watched with pride as her alien students prepared for their greatest test yet. You're not just surviving anymore, she said. You're evolving. First speaker looked at the battle preparations with new understanding. Their civilization hadn't become more primitive by learning warfare. It had grown stronger, smarter, more capable. The real war was about to begin. And this time, they were ready for it. 1 year after the first human military advisors arrived, the collective's main command center buzzed with activity. But it wasn't just collective warriors manning the stations. Representatives from a dozen alien species now worked alongside them. Another request for training from the Star Republic, second speaker reported, holding up a glowing datapad. That's the 5th one this month. Major Wilson smiled as he watched various alien species studying Earth's military tactics together. The collective had become the galaxy's premier military training ground, all because they had been humble enough to learn from their primitive human teachers. The swarm's main fleet will reach our defense line in 6 hours, Captain Miller announced from her station. The news didn't cause panic. Instead, warriors calmly moved to their battle stations with practiced efficiency. First speaker stood at the central command platform, his once ceremonial armor now bearing practical combat modifications. "Show me the fleet positions," he ordered. The tactical display lit up, showing hundreds of ships arranged in formation. But these weren't the bright, ceremonial vessels of old. The collected ships now bore camouflage patterns, shield modifications, and weapon systems that would have horrified their ancestors. "Remember when you thought warfare was primitive?" General Roberts asked, joining first speaker at the platform. "We were the primitive ones," he replied, "fighting wars like children playing games. The swarm taught us we needed to grow up. You humans showed us how." The massive swarm fleet emerged from hyperspace, exactly where they predicted. But this time, the collective was ready. More than ready. "Execute Operation Earth's Thunder," first speaker commanded. The battle that followed would be studied in military academies across the galaxy for centuries to come. The collective forces demonstrated everything they had learned from humanity: deception, coordination, adaptability, and innovation. The swarm's massive fleet found itself split apart by carefully planned maneuvers. Their formations were disrupted by mines hidden in asteroid fields. Their communications were jammed by technology developed through studying Earth's electronic warfare. "They're falling for the trap," Miller reported with satisfaction. "Just like humans at Kenai." The swarm forces, trying to envelope what they thought was the collective's main fleet, found themselves surrounded instead. The lessons of a battle fought on Earth thousands of years ago were now being applied in space. "All units, execute final phase," first speaker ordered. The collected ships struck from all directions, using tactics that combined Earth's military wisdom with advanced alien technology. The swarm fleet, for the first time in their history, began to break apart in panic. "They're retreating," second speaker announced. "No, they're surrendering." The command center erupted in cheers, but not the ceremonial celebrations of old. These were the satisfied cheers of warriors who had earned their victory through skill and strategy. Hours later, as the collective ships rounded up the surrendered swarm vessels, first speaker addressed the gathered representatives from various alien species. "A year ago, we thought we were advanced because we had forgotten warfare," he began. "We thought the humans were primitive because they remembered it. We were wrong." He gestured to the tactical displays showing their victory. "The humans taught us that understanding warfare doesn't make you primitive. Being unprepared for it does. They showed us that studying conflict drives innovation, encourages adaptation, and yes, even helps preserve peace." General Roberts stepped forward. "You learned well, and now you're teaching others." Indeed, the collective had become known as the Warriors' Academy of the Galaxy. Species that once looked down on humans now sent their best and brightest to learn Earth's military wisdom. "The galaxy is changing," Wilson observed, "thanks to humanity's primitive knowledge." First speaker looked out at the stars through the command center's window. "We thought we were coming to teach humanity about peace," he said. "Instead, humanity taught us about survival, innovation, and real strength." As if to prove his point, a new group of alien representatives arrived, eager to learn from the species that had learned from Earth. The age of ceremonial combat was over. A new era had begun, one where understanding warfare didn't mean loving it, but being prepared for it. And it had all started because some primitive humans knew more about fighting than a galaxy of advanced aliens. The greatest victory wasn't the defeat of the swarm, it was the lesson learned. Sometimes the most primitive answer is the most advanced solution of all.